Hello everybody, Maven here, and today I present to you the consecrationless Consecration Build. I know it sounds strange, but there's literally memes on Twitter and Reddit about how the only thing Prismatic Titan does is spam consecration, and that's 100% true. And if you say you built a Titan build that doesn't spam consecration, you're lying. But today I made a build that consecrates, but doesn't. I guess we can call it the flaccid Consecration Build. So today we're using the Exotic Class Item, combining the exotic perks of the Heart of Inmost Light, and most importantly, the Point Contact Cannon Brace. This makes it so powered melee hits will summon a lightning storm in a large radius around you and jolt all those enemies as well. It's extremely good for ad clear. And the thing is, the way Consecration works is you have to press your powered melee button twice after sliding, once to leap up in the air and the other time to slam down. The leap will consume half a melee charge and the slam will consume another half of the melee charge. And the reason this is so good with the Point Contact Cannon Brace is because it only takes that first initial Consecration leap to summon the lightning storm. You don't need to expend that second half of your melee charge to slam down. You'll get lightning on the leap alone. So TLDR, for half the melee energy cost, you get double the ad clear and spam ability, and I'll show you what I mean. So let me get this face cam off the screen and let's break it down. Hope you enjoy. So we're going to do a comparison in the Hydroponics Delta, and it's been a few months since I explained why the Hydroponics Delta, so I guess now is as good a time as ever. So this is a bow body shot against a Cabal in a raid, and here's a bow body shot against that same Cabal in Hydroponics Delta, and as you can see, ads are nearly twice as tanky as raid ads here, so it's a great place to test endgame weapons and builds. So with that said, let's start out with our Point Contact Cannon Brace build, and by the way, my other exotic perk on the class item is Inmost Light, so using all my abilities just helps all my abilities charge quicker, so you'll see me use my thruster and my grenade whenever I get the chance. And taking a look at our mods, we even have some stuff that further helps our cooldown in Momentum Transfer, Focusing Strike, Impact Induction, Absolution, Invigoration, Outreach, etc. And we can even make orbs with Reaper and Solar Siphon and scoop them up easily with Powerful Attraction to proc our boot mods and even get some health back with Recuperation. And among our fragments we have Faceted Balance, so our rapid light final blows will refund some melee energy, and with all the electricity and jolting going on with our Point Contact ability, it's extremely easy to proc this and get free energy refunded. And we also have Facet of Hope, which speeds up our class ability cooldown when we have an elemental buff, such as Amplified or Radiant, and that's important because Thruster procs Outreach, Powerful Attraction, and Reaper and Inmost Light, and having Facet of Hope is going to reduce our Thruster cooldown by 6 seconds, which is pretty decent. And our weapon of choice with this build is the Aberrant Action with Enhanced Pugilist and Demolitionist to further help our cooldowns. And between Inmost Light, our mods, and this weapon, we basically have infinite flaccid consecrations, and I had no trouble spamming it throughout the entire Hydro run here. And despite these ads being nearly twice as tanky as raid ads, we still had no trouble killing them with just the flaccid consecrates. And you might have been able to tell just how great the radius is on the Point Contact Cannon Brace. Just to show you another view of just how good the radius is, here's a little demonstration in the Orrery. And you can see how the lightning is reaching those goblins way up on the ledge. I've even seen it go further than that in some places, and it even goes through walls. So to say it's generous is an understatement. This thing spreads lightning all over the battlefield with incredible reach, applying jolt and collateral damage to everything. Now let's head back to the Hydro with your standard Consecration build. This is with the Inmost Light and Synthoceps. And you can gauge just how much we can spam Consecration when we actually have to expend our entire melee charge as opposed to the flaccid ones, and it was definitely noticeably less. Now yes, I know the run was a little bit scuffed, but it was fine enough to test our general cooldowns. Now there are pros and cons to the Syntho version and Cannon version. For the pros of the Syntho, obviously it's going to do far greater damage than the Point Contact, and the other pro is that in our mod setup we can have triple heavy-handed to make more orbs, which means more recuperation and survival. And the pros of the Point Contact version is that it's twice as spammable and does some insane ad clear. So the Syntho version is going to shine more in tougher content where you need to deal with champions or other yellow bar spam, but the Point Contact version is going to shine more in ad dense activities such as Onslaught, Dungeons, Gambit, Story, Seasonal, etc. And in some of the gameplay you might see me using the Monte Carlo with the Aberrant Action, but my typical loadout I use on Prismatic Titan is this: Lost Signal, Aberrant Action with an Eager Edge Sword. And with this loadout, I found it pretty easy to get Transcendence, and with the Syntho version, especially in tougher content like Grandmasters, you're heavily relying on Transcendence for your ability spam. And I've definitely had some times where I died because I ran out of abilities and didn't have ammo and didn't have Transcendence. And this is something that likely won't be a problem on the Point Contact Cannon Brace version, since it's twice as spammable and all those jolting lightning strikes make it easier to get light transcendent energy, and one single glacier grenade on a chunky target can fully charge your dark energy. So it is technically more reliable despite lacking damage. And speaking of damage, let's get out of Hydro and do a quick Carl comparison. So here's how much damage we do with Lost Signal plus Synthoceps against Carl. We get him completely one shot and he dies to the Lost Signal damage. And here's how much damage we do with Lost Signal plus Point Contact. And remember that the Point Contact applies Jolt and the Lost Signal lingers so it can continually proc the Jolt. And we chunk Carl for half of his health, so it appears to be exactly half of what the Synthos did, but this damage still ain't bad. Compared to things like rocket launchers, this is still really good damage. So the trade-off is that you sacrifice half your damage in exchange for twice the spam ability and twice the ad clear. So which do you prefer personally as a player? I would say it really depends on the level of content you're doing, but in a majority of situations, I would argue that the Point Contact is better. My eyes have really been open to it. It just has some really good utility, and honestly, I'm hooked. Now let's go back to Hydroponics Delta one last time. Why? Because I know that some Timmies in the comments are going to ask, what about Severance Enclosure plus Point Contact? Well, there's two problems with this. One, you don't get the boosted ability gen from Inmost Light, so your Flaccid Consecrates won't be as spammable as you'd like them to be. And two, Severance won't proc as much due to the way Point Contact works. In order for Severance to proc, you need to get powered melee final blows, but the Flaccid Consecrates really don't do that much damage. It's the Point Contact lightning strikes that do the damage, and likely those are what's going to pick up the majority of your kills, and those will not proc Severance. And in this Hydra run, we proc Severance like 3 times, and 2 of those times weren't even relevant, so it really isn't consistent enough for my liking. It has bad synergy with our strategy, and it's going to be a pass for me. But I still thought I'd show a clip of it for those who were curious. So let's head back to our Inmost Cannon Brace version for the rest of the video while I finish breaking down the build. So needless to say, our other aspect is Knockout. That's kind of just a given, not much to say there. And for our other fragments I didn't mention yet, we got Facet of Purpose to get overshields when we pick up orbs. But you can replace this with Facet of Courage if you want, and you can just run Thunder Crash instead of Twilight Arsenal, which I'm honestly considering. Next, we got Facet of Dawn to get Radiant on powered melee hits, and it feels like we just have infinite Radiance, and that's important because it gives us intrinsic anti-barrier. And finally, we got Facet of Protection because a little more resistance didn't hurt anyone. Now, one more thing I wanted to mention about the loadout is that an Eager Edge Sword is very important with Consecrate builds because you want to close the gap. But in this case, I might want to consider Anarchy in the heavy slot in some situations to make up for the lack of damage you miss out on for running Point Contact over Synthos. And that's also pretty good for light transcendent energy. And alternatively, you can run some kind of loadout that has the versus Velocity Baton, which I personally do not have. You can run like the Call plus Velocity Baton, or like an Outbreak Perfected, or whatever you need to stun champions. And that about does it for the entire build because we already went over the mods. So as always, the dim loadout link to the build will be down below in the description, and also the pinned comment if you'd like to give it a try. And if you got anybody who are Titan mains, I'd appreciate if you share the video with them. Maybe this is something they want to try out. For the gameplay loop with this build, just remember to use your grenade and thruster whenever you get the chance, because that's how you're going to be able to spam more consecrates. You got to be continually proccing those Inmost Light abilities. And you pretty much never want to use your entire consecrate charge unless you come up against a tankier target or when you have Transcendence going. While you're Transcendent, feel free to spam all the non-Flaccid Consecrates you want because it's essentially infinite. And in the background gameplay, I definitely didn't use my Transcendence as much as I could have because I was just trying to showcase off the Flaccid Consecrates. So definitely pop Transcendence whenever you get the chance. So this build was definitely an eye-opener, and it's definitely 100% earned its place on my loadout hotbar. It's going to be so much more effective in a majority of more situations than the Synthos version. And even a pet peeve of mine when using the Synthos is when I come across a tankier target and I need that double damage, sometimes I lose biotic enhancements because there's no trash mobs around, and suddenly I'm just using normal base consecrates that don't do any boosted damage. And at that point, the Point Contact Cannon Brace is stronger because it applies Jolt, and with Synthos with no biotic enhancements means it's just base consecrate. So The point contact version is much more consistent in my opinion. And when it comes to Grandmaster Nightfalls, obviously I'm going to stick with the Synthos, but when it comes to everywhere else, I think I'm going to start maining the point contact cannon brace. I'm very impressed with this thing. So that's going to do it for the video. Let me know what you think about the build in the comments down below, and I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, be sure to drop a like because it helps out a ton with the algorithm. And if you're new here, please consider subscribing. Would love to have you here for more content on the way, and I will catch you in the next video. See you later.